Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf special budget meeting. Today is Monday, February 26th, 2024. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for being here. Let's see. Okay. I was looking at our online visitors to see if anywhere from City Council, but I appreciate you all being here. And for our budget update and special meeting, we'll hand it over to our Director of Finance, Mr. Jason Schatt, and apparently our city administrator, who's sitting in the center of the room as well, Mr. Decker Plain. Gentlemen, you have the room. Thanks so much for your work so far on this topic, and department heads, thank you as well. We know what an integral role you play, as well as staff in finance. So gentlemen, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. This meeting is going to replace the meeting that we used to call the Norm Volliger, Jerry Sexer meeting, wherein we always had a public meeting outside of the public hearing that we normally had for citizens to come in and hear a budget presentation. So when this appeared on our calendar from the state, we immediately notified Jerry and we put a note on Norm's grave that there was no reason to be in attendance for this meeting any longer, because now it's required reading for anybody in the city to be here. This is one of 3 meetings that are public now, and we're going to go back through the slides with some changes based on feedback we got in the budget session, information we've gleaned from you all from our discussion on the Saturday work session, and perhaps some information in between. We'll make that presentation. We've added some things for you to consider. At your place, there should be a sheet that Jason developed with the department heads on some cost reductions that we have done over the last year or two throughout the city. And then we've added a couple of additional slides with some additional information that helps further explain both the option at 22 cents and at 46 cents and why. So I'm going to let Jason start, and our anticipation is there will be no decision this evening. We have 2 public hearings that will be coming, so this is to fulfill the requirement of this meeting. It can only be for budget, and get you more information, and obviously post this meeting online so people can see that. We also have taken the liberty, at the suggestion that was made on Saturday, of creating on the website, just like you put your address information in for garbage collection or where you vote, those sorts of things, we've added a calculator so folks can see their current tax rate. They can see what happens at 22 cents. They can see what happens at 46 cents. It shows them.
Worked beautiful, except mine popped up with a prize. It says I'm supposed to send gift cards to Monty Sankson.
Perfect. Good. You know the system's working now.
It is. And I clicked on it so I could go to jail with you.
I need a roommate. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason, and maybe there's some discussion at the end, but there is no action being asked of you this evening. So Jason.
Thank you. As council is well aware, certainly there's been some public discussion around the budget, but tonight's presentation is really the first full public presentation of the budget as we've constructed it so far. That work began all the way back at the end of August when my first budget email went out to department heads. So thanks to department heads for all of their work over the last several months. Thanks to council for your work over the past couple of months on this budget. We are nearing the end of the process, but it is a much longer process than we're used to, thanks to some of that new legislation. So with that, I will dive right in. As Decker said, this is going to be a lot of review. We've seen these slides before, many of them, but I think it's important to give the full picture for this public presentation. The FY 24-25 budget is constructed at about $118 million across all funds. We think it demonstrates the city's financial strength and flexibility, especially as we respond to an extraordinary decrease in the rollback and legislative property tax reductions, as well as the challenges of soaring costs that everyone is feeling. This budget strengthens the city's commitment to public safety by securing funding of 6 Safer Grant firefighters that are being hired or already in place as we speak, and adds key staff in not only in fire, but also parks, library, and community engagement. I'll start by talking about that residential rollback. You'll recall that it's dropping from about 54.65% in the current year down to 46.34% for this coming budget year. That's a one-year change of over 15%, the biggest one-year drop since 1979. As you know, the residential rollback determines the portion of assessed value that we can tax as taxable of residential properties. So under 50% of the total assessed value of a home is taxable. Assessed value in Bettendorf increased over 19%. We all remember getting those assessment notices back last April from the county. There was some shell shock at some of the increases in assessed valuation, but the rollback, again, wiped most of that away. Increase in taxable value was limited to just 4%, and most of that is from new construction. Taxable value on existing residential property largely decreased some 1.5%. The commercial rollback remains 90%, but I'll remind you there is the business property tax credit portion where the first 150,000 of a commercial property is taxed at the same rate as residential. So in this coming year, 46.34%. That move reduced taxable value by about 39 million, equivalent to about $354,000 of property tax revenue to the general fund. There was also legislation in place or put in place last year that affects this budget. HF 718, largely for Bettendorf, just limits growth in the property tax revenue by automatically reducing the general fund levy rate in a tiered growth limitation factor. And this year, our general fund levy rate is $7.80. For FY 24-25, that will automatically be reduced to $7.65, or about $430,000 of property tax reduction. The legislation also expanded property tax exemptions with no replacement. Valuation exempt from taxation in the current year was 2.9 million. Next year, that goes up to 14.9 million. That's exempt from taxation, equal to about $150,000 in property tax revenue in the general fund. Thankfully, as the general fund levy rate is reduced, the city of Bettendorf is in a unique position where we can come back to some of the other available levies to fill the gap. And we'll show you how that works in a couple of slides. When you take these items together, the change in the rollback, the legislation, the commercial rollback, the change in how multi-residential property is taxed. Remember, that used to be commercial and now it's taxed fully as residential. All of these things over the past 10 years have reduced the portion of assessed value that is taxable from about 62% 10 years ago down to 51% for this coming year. And in fact, the change just from FY 24 to 25 wiped away about $393 million in taxable value for Bettendorf alone, equal to about $3 million in potential property tax dollars that we could have gone and captured for the general fund if necessary. Not to say that we would have, but I think in any other year, had we had taxable values more in line with what we've seen over the past several years, 60% or so, we might be talking about a levy rate decrease this year instead of an increase. We're also dealing with prices on the rise. Inflation has affected everybody. For us, we signed and are happy to have come to agreements with all 4 labor unions. Those contracts were agreed to in December. We secured 4-year contracts with some market-driven increases to remain competitive in the labor market. We have a 25 to 30% increase in premiums for our risk and liability insurance. We have health insurance costs that are on the rise, 20% higher than FY '23. Vehicles and equipment, obviously everyone sees that inflation happening, exceeding 10% increases annually. And I have, a table of examples there that we've talked about, that a pickup truck has doubled in the last 9 or 10 years. The sewer factors have nearly doubled in their lifetime of 10 years. In detail, expenditures impacting the property tax levy rate. So these are expenditures that have a levy rate associated with them. We can levy a separate rate for our risk and liability insurance. As I mentioned, we're told to expect a 25 to 30% increase there. That's equivalent to about a nickel on the levy rate. In health insurance, again, we have a separate levy rate we can utilize for these costs. 13% increase over the current year adopted budget. The increases in costs that include health care, medical care, vision, dental, and pharmacy expenditures is equivalent to 14-cent increase on the levy rate. We have the municipal fire police retirement system pension. That contribution rate from a city perspective is actually going down from 22.98% to 22.66%. But despite that increase, we have more of these guys, more police and fire, and their rate of pay is increasing, so we do need a little bit extra to fund the pension contribution, equivalent to about 3 cents on the levy rate. And then finally, transit has its own levy rate that we can utilize. Due to some expanded federal funding, we're able to actually reduce the portion of the levy that's required by transit from 15 cents to 12 cents. But I do warn that won't last forever. I think we have about 2 years remaining of some expanded funding that is in place since the pandemic. And then we'll have to build that levy rate back up. Finally, we have the debt service levy. And I'll take a moment here to just talk about how debt service and the levy rate works. These are dollars that we levy to pay principal and interest on debt that we owe. We issue debt, as you know, to complete capital projects, and in some cases buy very long-term capital equipment. And we levy a tax specific to that purpose. And this year, the levy rate was $4.85. We are suggesting a levy rate of $4.85 for next year. No change there. These dollars are specific to debt service. They can't be used for anything else. There was a notion that the debt service required of the Gateway Bridge project might require a tax increase or might be a burden on the general fund, and that's just simply not the case. We won't increase the debt levy rate here. We won't require funding outside of the debt service fund to serve that debt. And in fact, at full valuation, that project will kind of fund itself, if you will. The valuation of the commercial development out there, coupled with the city's 25% take of the TIF increment, will cover the debt service on the Gateway Bridge. So just in summary, we've talked about a lot of impacts on the levy rates. So I've stuck a new slide in since you last saw the presentation. We have the cost of living adjustments, those contracts with the labor unions. That levy rate equivalent of that expenditure increase is 31 cents. We talked about liability insurance being about a nickel, employee health insurance 14 cents, the pension plus 3 cents, but transit minus 3 cents, and then no change in the debt service levy. In total, before we add any new personnel or any new expenditures to the budget, the increased costs that you see here are equal to 50 cents of the levy rate. Now, the FY 24-25 budget absorbs those costs without a levy rate increase through new property valuation. Again, that 4% growth in taxable value is largely from new construction. Non-property tax revenue sources such as sales tax, hotel motel tax, and other things. And then reductions in other costs. And we'll talk about some cost reductions in a couple of slides. As you're aware, the budget does make some requests for additions in staff. Most notably, the firefighters. We have a SAFER grant that will hire 6 firefighters and pay for their labor costs, their personnel costs for the first 3 years of their career. A minimum levy increase of 36 cents over the next 3 years, 12 cents a year, or any combination thereof, is necessary to cover the cost of those 6 firefighters and the fire marshal. So we first came to you with the suggestion that we would increase the levy 22 cents this year. That was the first 12 cents of that 36, and then an extra 10 cents to cover some other additions, such as the library programming outreach assistant, the parks and recreation director, and the public relations and building maintenance positions. After some discussions, there was the suggestion that maybe we should fund all of the SAFER grant firefighters up front, increase the levy by that 36 cents necessary, plus the 10 cents for those other items, totaling 46 cents. So you can just see as you work your way across the table here, a 22-cent increase begins to fund those SAFER grant firefighters by about a third, but it would require an additional 24 cents to be increased on the levy over the next 2 years. 46 cents fully funds the 6 SAFER grant firefighters and those other items, including the fire marshal, the library position, the parks and recreation position. And guarantees that that funding is in place when the SAFER grant period of performance runs out in 3 years. Cost reduction initiatives, obviously. I just want to say this is a short list, a summarized list of what you have in front of you here. Obviously, I don't want to go through it, but I thought the slide was valuable and just putting a bunch of stuff on here. We are working day in and day out to find ways to reduce costs. A lot of credit goes to the department heads who run a very tight ship in their departments. As you know, we are a lean, mean fighting machine on the operating side, but these are just some of the highlights of what we've done over the past couple of years. Things like interns and seasonal staff to be able to flex up staff when we need it, but then flex down when we don't. We have facilities like the Family Museum and the library that are closed on Sundays. Palmer Hills Golf Course has native no-mow areas and has actually reduced chemical applications by about half. We have virtual continuing education and a lot of online training, web-based training happening to reduce travel costs. Those registrations for that type of training is typically less costly. And fire, obviously, the SAFER grant is the big one, but one you may not know about is automatic aid agreements with some of our surrounding fire departments. On the in human resources, a lot of things have happened to the health plan. Most recently, we moved our prescription benefit administration from Elixir to Wellmark. We take advantage of some better discounts. We get some better rebates. So that's keeping costs in the health plan down, along with the wellness program and the wellness committee, who are always looking for ways to keep costs down. Interested in police, rather than buy all new rifles, they repurposed the rifle lowers and only bought, I guess, the uppers. If we repurposed the lowers, I assume we bought the uppers and made a whole rifle. I don't know how it works. In Public Works, you know about our liquid snow and ice control program, the mid-mount wing plows that make, one pass the work of 2 in removing snow. We've done LED lighting projects throughout the city and utilized rebates through Mid-American to get that done at near zero cost. And then the waterfront lighting project, that was going to be a nearly $700,000 project to replace all the lighting at the Waterfront Convention Center. And I think Brian's team was able to go in there and get it done for under $125,000 if I recall. So these are just some of the items. I'd encourage you to read through the packet here and know that, and I know we have just scratched the surface on this, because doing things more efficiently and more cost effectively is just kind of in our nature. And there's plenty of examples of that in the budget. I moved this slide up from the end because it was a good place for it to talk about that lean operating. The chart shows where we stand against the 21 other cities that are over 24,000. When you look at only our operating levies and the fees for our utilities, which largely fund operations in those funds. And we are the lowest cost to that average home in Bettendorf, $1,999. The only city on the list under 2,000, I like to say. So our total levy rate, we have kind of these two options that we're left with, the plus 22 cent versus the plus 46 cent. If we were to raise it up 22, that would move our total levy rate to 1287. Plus 46 is a total of 1311. But then I would just point out the different levy rates in the middle of the table there: health insurance, liability insurance, police and fire pension, and transit. This is where we can come back to those levy rates to fill the gap in the general fund. You'll see it dropping from 780 to 765 in either scenario. And we're gonna use those other levy rates to fill the gap, or in this case, even add a little bit of levying capacity where we can. What's the property tax impact on a residential property? If we were to go with 22 cents, $12.87 levy on a mean assessed value home, which this year was $318,000. The impact, that home went up on average across the city by about 17%. So the impact of the change in assessed value would be plus $317 on their tax bill. But the rollback wiped away all of that and then some. The rollback would have wiped away $335 on this home. Our levy rate at plus 22 would add $32 for a net effect of plus $14 on the mean home in Bettendorf. This is a home that increased 17%. If your home increased about 16% or less, you will likely pay less taxes in FY25 than in FY24, even with a 22-cent increase. Down to the second blue table, if we go to 46 cents or 1311 in total. Again, impact of change in assessed value is the same, $317 increase. Impact of the rollback is the same, minus $335. But the impact by the levy rate change is now $66 for a net increase of $48 or just 2.6% on this home. Again, many properties, those that did not increase around 16% or more will still pay less in this scenario. Up to 35% of properties in Bettendorf would actually still pay less at plus 46 than they do in the current year. And I would just remind you that a 22-cent increase still requires an additional 24 cents over the next 2 years. So we're going to get to that plus 48 number. It's just a matter of how quickly we do that. Decker mentioned before we started, there's a property tax estimate calculator on the website. I wanted to show what that looks like. If you go to the website, and you can see a link below, and that's kind of a long one. We have better ways to get there. Put in your address here in the red circle and hit the search box. You will be taken to a page that includes this. There's some caveats here that this is only an estimate. There's other things that go into a property tax bill, other credits, other exemptions from tax that might change how a person's property tax bill is calculated, but this should provide a very good estimate. And you'll notice this particular property taxpayer is paying $1,577 in the current year at $1,265. If we were to leave it at $1,265 for this coming year, this would pay about $40 less. At $1,287 or plus 22 cents, it's actually down about $12. And then finally at plus 46 cents or $13.11 in total. Finally, that's the point that this home would be paying more property taxes by about, not quite $20, $17 or so. So not a real big impact either way. But this calculator is out there and residents can find it and punch in their address to see. I don't know where 1234 ABC Avenue is, but sounds like a nice place. If you look at property taxes across the Quad Cities, and this is now for the current year, we don't know where these folks are headed for the budget year. You can see that Bettendorf provides an incredible value, we believe, for the service we provide. We remain the lowest in the Quad Cities. You pay a little bit differently depending on which school district you're in, but either way, we're lower than Davenport, lower than Moline, lower than Rock Island, and I think we provide a heck of a service for doing that. In either case, because the SAFER grant will be paying for those firefighters for the first 3 years, any increase in the levy for that purpose will create a bit of surplus revenue. If we go to 22 cents and then 12 and 12, it's probably in the neighborhood of $1 million, maybe a little less. If we were to do the 46 cents right away, we could have about $2 million by the end of those 3 years in surplus revenue to do any number of things with. And we put some examples here only for an example of what we could do, but this is not a complete list by any means, and lots of things could come up that would change our mind anyway. First, we could obviously hold that money in reserve. We don't know necessarily how the state might attack property taxes going forward. We've heard things about a potential commercial rollback going to 80%. We've heard things about some of those other available levy rates maybe being consolidated in the future. So holding it in reserves is always an option. As you know, we have some city building and facility needs. This money could go towards acquisition or renovation. Things like PD, fire department, city hall. There's some projects at the library and the family museum. The Public Works garage doors. This is $600,000 in garage doors. We currently have it funded with sales tax in the CIP, but you could choose to do a project like this with that money. And then, of course, parks, playgrounds, shelters, splash pads, anything among that in that realm. There's a lot of unfunded projects in the CIP. Brent mentioned bridges when we went through CIP a few weeks ago. 18th Street Bridge over Duck Creek needs to be done. The George Teenham Bridge right outside this building needs to be reconstructed, and the Middle Road Bridge over Duck Creek needs to be redone. This money would go a long way, probably towards one of those bridges. We have arterials, Kimberly, Middle Indiana, Valley View, and Dodds that are sitting out in the unfunded column of the CIP. We have the fiber network replacement project that we're trying to kind of chip away at with little bits of money here and there, but it in total will cost $2.5 million. And then there's the idea of a sewer lateral program where the city could take on the cost of those sewer lateral repairs on residential properties. There's vehicle and equipment. As you know, we've just ordered a aerial fire truck a few weeks ago. That cost was about $600,000 24 years ago. It's now $2 million. We have that planned to be funded with GO bonds out in 3 years when we expect to receive this truck. But you could divert this money to that purchase instead of bonding for it. There's a desire to get a front end loader with a snow attachment. I think all in, that's a $400,000 piece of equipment. We'll fund it with road use and vehicle, but you could fund it with this money as well. And then there's any number of economic development projects that are always coming your way. West Bridge and Riverfront certainly at the forefront of that, but this money could be used for property acquisition, utility burials, public improvements, or ED grants if necessary. So that's just a sampling of the ideas that we kind of quickly came up with around any surplus revenue. Certainly not a complete list though, as I said. Shifting gears away from property taxes, we're going to talk very briefly about the utility enterprise funds and how those are affected in this budget. As you know, we've recommended increases in those fees, and actually you've already taken up the first reading of the ordinance that would change those for them to be in effect by April 1. In the sanitary sewer fund, we would recommend an increase from 384 to 405. This is the first of the bigger than usual increases that we've done here, and all about funding the debt service for the SRF loans that will be used to put in the Spencer Creek Lift Station, and then some future expansion to the east, some future I&I projects in the inner city. So taking on a little bit of extra debt for those very expensive sewer projects, but they are critical to some of the city's goals going forward. So we've put in a fee structure in place to make sure that that happens. Increase of about 21 cents as of 21 cents per 100 cubic feet of flow of that sewer. In the solid waste fund, we've done many years of 5% increases here. We kind of went down to 3% for a few years and even held off. I believe last year we did not do a fee increase at all. We're going to do a 2% increase on the solid waste fund. That would increase a 65-gallon cart from $18.15 per month to $18.51. But takes care of all of the needs of that fund, including operating and the purchase of a whole new fleet of garbage and recycling trucks, which are ordered and scheduled to arrive in the next couple of years. And then finally, in the stormwater fund, we recommend the 20-cent increase from $5.60 per ERU to $5.80, again, effective April 1st. And this is the fee increase necessary to maintain operations, capital equipment, and debt service in this fund. As you can see on the chart, as we kind of near that $6 sweet spot, we may be able to kind of slow increases here. So keeping an eye on that, and hopefully that comes to be. So impact of fees and taxes across the board. If we take all of those items, the increased taxes, the increased fees, how does it impact our mean value home? Two options here. Still working with the 1287, the 22-cent increase, or the 1311, 46-cent increase. We talked about that impact on the average home, $13.86 if we go up 22 cents, $48 if we go up 46 cents on property taxes. Then the sewer fee increase from 384 to 405 will cost an average home about $18.48 per year. Stormwater fee increases about $2.40 per year. And then solid waste fees, just $4.32 per year, for a total of $39.06 if we do 22 cents, or $73.33 at 46 cents. Still among the lowest costs when you add all these things together of those sample cities we look at. And I'll move on to commercial before I do. We talked about cost reductions, and they're listed here, and I meant to mention it earlier. A big part of that slide, and let me just take you back there. Sorry for the. Under the culture and recreation section on here, eliminated the cost of operations at the Life Fitness Center. We've eliminated the cost of operations at Splash Landing, and we've actually eliminated the cost of operations at Palmer Grill by contracting that out to a service provider to provide that service. That is all part of how this budget is able to absorb an increase equivalent to 50 cents just in the status quo budget. Some of those cost avoidance, cost eliminations are a big reason why we are able to absorb those costs without a further levy increase. All right. So on the commercial side, the tax bill is going up pretty pretty substantially in the commercial side. They had a nearly 21% increase in assessed valuation for the average commercial property. And the rollback just doesn't necessarily affect that like it does in residential. So no matter what we did with the levy rate, a commercial property will see an increase here. At 22 cents, their total increase across all these fees, sewer, storm, most don't pay solid waste, would be about 19%. At 46 cents, about 21%. So not a big difference between the two options for a commercial property, but we wanted to be clear that this was the impact for those properties. And then kind of putting a visual to those last couple of slides, if you take property taxes, you take the utility fees, you apply it to that average home, average utility usage, things of that nature, and place the same usage, the same home in these 21 other cities across the state of Iowa, you'll see where we land. We're in about 8th lowest position here, but I always point out, between second place and 8th place, there is really not a whole lot of difference. And if you look at those cities, those are the ones that we probably compare best to. Ames, West Des Moines, Dubuque, Ankeny, Johnston, Cedar Falls, cities a lot like Bettendorf. So also providing great value to their citizens, just like we are for the burden that we ask on them, be that taxes or fees. I think we provide a great value. And that's something that I know we as a staff are very proud of. That is it for the presentation. I wanted to share the budget calendar again. The green row there, February 26th special council meeting budget presentation is where we are at. From here, next Tuesday, council will take action only by setting the date for the first public hearing. That public hearing will take place on March 25th. I apologize again, I have to ask you to come in here on a off-cycle week, a non-council week for a special meeting. But like a lot of things in this budget, I'm blaming the state. So there will be a public hearing. We will publish for that public hearing, obviously, prior to, but council will take no action. You can have a discussion, certainly part of the public hearing, but no action. After that, we will set the date for the second public hearing and then adoption of the budget, which will take place on April 16th.
At a regular meeting.
At a regular meeting, which will be nice. So from our standpoint, this week I will be completing the online budget materials to submit to the state. They've asked for those by next Tuesday, March 5th. I think the direction that I'm hearing, unless there's a different direction tonight, is that we would probably want to fill those out and publish at the 46-cent level. That publication or that step, getting those to the state on March 5th will coincide with the public hearing notice that will go out for the March 25th public hearing. So it'll be the same information, the same levy rate, same dollars in those two forms. So,
And Your Honor, just for the benefit of somebody who might be watching in, we believe publishing it at 46 cents gives the maximum that the council could levy at. We could always lower back to 22 cents or any version that the council would choose to do. But we have to publish the highest number that we're considering, because if we don't publish that, then we can't enact that. So we would be publishing at 46 cents, knowing that if the council chose not to do that, it could go lower, it cannot go higher. So
Talked about that a couple times. I didn't hear an objection to publishing there. I don't think we've satisfied where everybody may lie at this point, but I think it makes sense to be at the higher number to give you the opportunity, right? I think that's
what we thought we heard.
Yeah, well, I had suggested that because it makes absolutely no sense to me to have a conversation if you're not going to give yourself the ability to have the conversation. And the only way we have the conversation is you publish high. Okay? Other thoughts about, yes, Councilmember Jager?
Thank you, Your Honor. excuse me, I was unclear on the slide where you were talking about the cost in dollar equivalents of the employee COLA. You said it was equivalent of 31 cents. Is that over the life of the contract, or is that just the first year?
Just the first year.
So whatever increases are coming in the second year, we would also assume have to be absorbed somewhere.
Yep.
And the use, if we were to do the larger number now, we'd have a reserve that would be available to pay operational expenses for COLAs in the second year if something untoward happens in the state law or whatever.
That's a really good point. We have typically been able to fund cost of living adjustments, and we would have again this year, even at 31 cents, through growth in property values and new construction that adds property taxes, but also growth in other revenue sources like sales tax. If the legislature should do something that would reduce growth again, reduce property tax revenue,
Knock the commercial rollback to 80?
exactly, we would have that flexibility to withstand that at least for a couple of years while we figure out a response.
Other
Your Honor,
thoughts?
one
Yes,
other
sir.
point if I
Okay.
could.
You bet.
Thank you. I really want to thank staff for this. It,
Gives you ammunition. It's helpful.
I think it's critical that the people understand that before we raise taxes, even a penny, that we have staff that are trying to do their job, trying to be efficient, trying to look for ways to do what's right with every tax dollar that we take from people. And this, what you handed out today is 11 pages of things that you've looked at in attempts to hold the line on budget, find efficiencies, find cost savings. I hope that this gets put on the website somewhere so people can see this too, because this is really a critical component as far as I'm concerned, knowing that staff really is watching the dollars. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other thoughts from those at the table? Anything else from the two of you based on that?
For me, Your Honor,
No
thank you.
giant words of wisdom, Your Honor.
All right.
And I would note for the record, the same attendance that we used to have when Jerry was
Jerry's
a
here.
volunteer is the same attendance that we have today.
I know it.
Maybe you could run back there and sit down for a minute.
Give him another budget book.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate it, department heads, and we'll be doing this again in another special meeting, at least folks up here. Yes, Councilmember Baden.
Just one quick thing. I think it would be nice if we could explain to the public how we're running a very lean city on employees. Because I think sometimes that gets missed. And I think these people sitting over here to my right do an excellent job of keeping the number of employees down. And I just think they're doing a great job.
That's usually my favorite slide at the mayor's, or at the State of the City, and I appreciate those who made it. Thank you all. And we did a mayor's message on that Friday, sending them to that slide and a few of my other favorites, trying to get them to go listen to it. And I'm sure the Bobcat will be available for people to look at. Misspoke there. Don't ever watch yourself after a 45-minute presentation. You won't like what you see. Doesn't matter how well you did. So we're trying, and Angie knows that that's a great thing for us to try to tout, and I know she's working on it. So let's let the wizard be the wizard. Anything else? Well, I guess at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thanks for being here. Good job, everybody.